Hello, indie gaming fans. As if the world of Blade Runner didn't have enough things to keep track of with all the different versions of movies, now we have different versions of video games. Today, I'm the ex-hardcore gamer, and I'll be talking about Blade Runner Enhanced Edition. So while yes, there was an action-adventure side-scroller for various PC platforms back in 1985, this is actually an enhanced version of the 1997 point-and-click adventure game from Westwood Studios. This 1997 game was based on the movie, but unfortunately, due to different rights being held over various ownerships, it did make so that different aspects of the movie couldn't be used. There are, in fact, locations and characters from the original movie, with the actors even returning for many of the roles, but the soundtrack itself was unavailable and a whole new one had to be created. Another major difference from the movie is that you do not play as Deckard, you actually play as an all-new character named Ray McCoy. This is because you are going to be playing an original story that takes place at the same time as the events of the original movie. Because of this, Deckard will be mentioned multiple times as you're playing through the game's story, and you will even see him at various points as well, but he does not speak any lines at all. For those of you unfamiliar, the world of Blade Runner takes place in the future where there are these androids known as replicants that are bioengineered to look and act like humans. They are only supposed to have a set lifespan, and if they try to live any time past that, they are hunted down by these Blade Runners, and instead of being called killed, it is called being retired. Another aspect of this future is that many animals have either died off and become extinct or are close to it. It's because of this that there is a major market for people to buy and sell these exotic animals. The game kicks off at one of these exotic animal shops, and a suspected replicant comes in and kills off many of the animals inside. You will play as McCoy, who is the detective assigned to the case to find out why this happened. Obviously, things are not going to be cut and dry or easy to figure out, so there's going to be a major story that unfolds as you investigate more. Just a warning for those that are wanting to play this game, it is heavily insinuated that this shop owner does have an underage employee that he has an inappropriate relationship with. If that's something that's not going to sit well with you, this is not going to be a game that you're going to want to play. It's not a major part of the story for most of it, but it is there, so I wanted you to know. Some uncomfortable content aside, it is quite an interesting story, especially for fans of the original movie. The fact that it does tell its own story makes it so you don't know exactly what's going to happen next, but it does still feel quite familiar. Another aspect I really enjoyed with the story of Blade Runner is the fact that there are different decisions that you can make that affect the outcome of the story. Based on choices made, it will play out differently, and you can even get different endings. This wasn't very common for point-and-click adventure games back in the day, so it's really nice to see even today in 2022. Fans of point-and-click adventure games will feel right at home while playing Blade Runner, as you just move a cursor around to interact with your game. The interface itself is simplified, as you do not select from a list of verbs like you would in something like a LucasArts game. Instead, the game will just use whatever is the most appropriate action for whatever it is that you're interacting with. For example, if there's an item on the ground, when you click on it, you'll walk over and pick it up. But if you click on a person, it's going to start a conversation with them. The cursor will change different colors to let you know how the interactions will be. If it becomes the color green, that means that it's going to be an object or a person that you can interact with, but the color blue means that you will move to a new location. The game will start you off with a few different locations that you can visit to talk to people and find clues, and as you investigate more, you will find more places to go to and more people that can help you out. Separate from your main investigation, sometimes you'll run into people that you can do the test to find out if they are a replicant or not.
Reaction time is a factor in this, so please pay attention. Where do you live?
Downtown, 4th sector. Hey, this is great. Should I be sitting any special way?
Just relax.
If someone is determined to be a replicant, it is then up to you to decide whether you want to spare them or execute them, retire them on the spot. This is done by right-clicking, which will then change your cursor to an aimer icon, and then clicking on them to shoot them. Simple enough, and yes, you can kill innocent people. This is one of the many before-mentioned choices that can be made that will affect the story going forward. Besides retiring replicants, there will be other times that you need to use your gun as well, and again, it's as simple as right-clicking to change to the crosshair and then clicking on something to shoot it. This might be to solve a puzzle by shooting a lock, or maybe it will be an action sequence. I say that it's simple enough, but unfortunately doesn't always work quite as well as you would hope. Even in a simple training sequence, I found that the gun wouldn't shoot quite how you would like it to, and sometimes it didn't even work at all. It seems that the training sequence does have some bugs with how it actually even starts the sequence and how it ends it, and I'm not quite sure if this was something that was in the original version or not, as I did not play that version back in 1997. While I do commend the developers for trying to come up with a different aspect so that it wasn't your typical point-and-click game, unfortunately, with it not working as well as one would hope, it does kind of bring down the experience a bit. Unfortunately, another experience in the game that does bring things down is the use of the computer to enhance photos and find more clues. The idea is that you will zoom in on various parts of a photo to be able to get some more details to find more clues in your investigation. Unfortunately, even when you know exactly what it is that you need to zoom in on, it doesn't always do it the way that you want it to. I ran into multiple instances where I knew exactly what I needed to do, it would zoom in, and then I would have to right-click to have it zoom out just a tick for me to then click some more to actually have it zoom into where I needed it to be. It wasn't very intuitive, and it can lead to a lot of frustration. So while I did play the game for the majority of the time with a mouse as was originally intended, in the enhanced version they did add the option to be able to use a gamepad. I did play it on the PC, but I do know that there are versions that came out for consoles as well, and obviously those would use the controller too. When I tried using the controller method though, I found that it was a bit too sensitive, and while it can be adjusted, it never quite felt right. In the end, you're still just using an analog stick to move a cursor around, so I felt like I might as well just use a mouse. This isn't like the Monkey Island remasters where they gave you the option to directly control your character. Moving on to the graphics, unfortunately, this is where things do take a bit of a dark turn. While I'm normally a fan of what Nightdive has done to be able to enhance some games, I feel that some of the decisions were a bit questionable in Blade Runner. When released in 1997, Blade Runner definitely pushed the limits of what could be done technologically. There was quite a bit that the game accomplished that the developers were told it couldn't be done, and yet it did it all without the use of hardware 3D accelerators. This was accomplished by using pre-rendered backgrounds, and the characters, instead of having polygons, actually used voxels. Obviously, the resolution that everything was done at is quite low by today's standards, and so what they've done with the enhanced edition is try to smooth some things over with the backgrounds. By doing this, you lose a lot of the detail, and on top of that, the characters look pretty much the same, so they stand out even more than they did in the original release. It's going to be quite obvious what the objects are that you need to pick up, because it's the one thing that super stands out from everything else. It reminds me of when I was watching a cartoon as a kid, and you could tell which door was going to open in the background because it was the one that looked completely different. Another difference that's noticeable in this enhanced version is when you actually pick up those objects. In the original release, when you picked up an item, a 3D image would then pop up and spin around so you could get a look at what it was. In this new enhanced edition, now that image will just pop up and quickly disappear before you even have a chance to notice it. The frame rates in the cutscenes have also been improved, whereas the original game ran them at 15 frames per second, they now run at a full 60. While it is nice to get rid of that choppiness that was in the original release, it does look a little bit weird and out of place now. While it definitely looks much better and runs much smoother, it does look a bit weird and almost too good at times, because you then jump into a gameplay segment where, while it's running at whatever frame rate your monitor supports, the animations have not become any smoother. As I mentioned before, the original movie soundtrack was not available to the developers to be able to use in the game. Because of this, a new composer was hired, and he was able to make a soundtrack that does, for the most part, feel like it fits right in. It's a synth-based soundtrack that sounds very, very similar to the original 1982 soundtrack for the most part, but unfortunately there are some times, usually the battle sequences, where the 1997 of it starts showing through and it gets a little bit more into the techno realm. The game is fully voice acted, which is a nice little touch and was not all that common back in 1997, especially when you consider the fact that, as I mentioned before, it does have a lot of the cast returning to play their roles. Some of the accents may be a little bit more troublesome in today's day and age, but at least it was the actors that did play it in the movie, and I'm gonna just kind of leave it at that.
What's real fresh tonight?
Special shipment of Toro just arrived. I fix you right up, no one else. Clean as a whistle.
This new enhanced edition did also add subtitles, but unfortunately, at least in its current state, it's only for the main game itself and not in the cutscenes at all. This does seem to be a bit of an odd omission, but I have read of people using the PlayStation version saying that there were subtitles during the text crawl, so maybe it was something that's temporarily been taken away until they come up with a fix. Speaking of temporarily taken away, the game originally had full audio support in multiple languages, and now it only seems to be in English. Yes, you can change the subtitles to be in other languages, but right now the full audio and spoken dialogue is only in English. They say that you can go to the properties menu on Steam and be able to change the language that way, which forces an update, but I found that everything still seemed to be quite the same even when I tried to do that. In their defense, the developers say that they are working on it and they are hoping to have a fix soon. While some things have been improved in this enhanced edition, some things are also questionable at best. While the developers are working on making some improvements and updates to the game, it seems that some of them may be too little too late, or may not even address the major problems that are still there. Seems that right now the classic version is the best way to play it, and luckily for those on PC, if you buy it on Steam or GOG, the classic version is included. But for those on consoles, that is just not an option. It's also worth noting that right before I went to record this review, there was an update that added the original version with some restored content that was left unused in the original game. So you now have 3 different ways that you can pick to play. If you had previously already purchased the game on GOG and have just the classic edition, it's a bit of a hard sell to tell people to get this newly released enhanced edition. But if you haven't bought it already, at least you do have the option to play that version, at least on PC. For those of you on consoles, buyer beware.
Thank you so much for supporting clickbait-free content here at I Dream of Indie. We would now like to take a moment to shout out our brave indie warriors and legends that help to make this channel possible. At the Indie Warriors tier, we have Bill, Christian Cruz, Adriana Amato, CJR, PSC, Julian Colbus, Jesse, Ray Lynn, Marky Mint, Dave Hart, Peekaboo, Lex Noyle, Strict9, Sheik Geek, and Solaroo C. At the Indie Legends tier, we have Jen Rose, Larkison, Mitchell Hall, Skeptism, Nathan Moore, Chris Jackson, Mr. W, Blue Francis 14, The Beefarinis, Business Cody, Chiron, Jace Glover, King of the Hatch, Ophidian Mind, and Lord Metroid. Thank you so much for everything that you do for independent developers, publishers, and for I Dream of Indie. Everybody else head down to the description box below. Let's defeat the gaming echo chamber and bring a voice to the voiceless ones in gaming.